Another week, another story on sea level rising and how it's going to affect South Dunedin. Reports out this week called the Natural Hazards of South Dunedin report indicate that an 11 centimetre rise of the sea levels in many properties between Harguest Crescent and Bayview Road would be flooded. The report then goes on to state other parts of South Dunedin and the surrounding areas that would disappear underwater the more the sea level increased. We have got, a lot of information about this because there was another report, David Loughrey, out this week as well about the land subsiding and the sea level rising. So it seems that there is a lot of information at the moment focusing on South Dunedin and the impact that the sea is going to have on it.
Yeah, the joke doing the rounds at the moment, I can tell you in the newsroom, is this. Within a few years, if you put your head in the sand about climate change in South Dunedin, you're going to hit the water level.
That's the other thing. Then there's the water table as well. So it's the sea level, it's the change in climate, it's the water table coming up, and it's the land going down.
Yeah.
It's going to be a water park.
An important aspect of the story on the sea level rise is it notes in the intro could be permanently inundated with groundwater within decades if action is not taken. And I mean, I was just having a look back at stories we've done in the past, and one of them in about 2011 or 12 was regarding the possibility of a seawall that would be sunk into Kettle Park behind Middle Beach and going along as they need to. And I remember we saw plans for this some years ago, and the policy I think that they took was to take that idea on board, but they sort of put it off for, I think, they're in a holding pattern for maybe 10 or 15 years. They've got a budget of hundreds of thousands of years to keep the sand sausages going and put sand back on the thing, but that's the sort of thing, and we've talked about more pumping stations down there, etc., as a possibility in the future if that sort of becomes clearly necessary. But the other option that the group Sustainable Dunedin City came to the council with a while ago when they were having hearings about this was a managed retreat. And so really in the end the city has to go, well, what's the better way to spend our money? You know, should it be on one, should it be on the other? And obviously they have to take in the social cost of that as well. But yeah, those are things they're going to have to think about.
It's really interesting what you say, a managed retreat, because talking about, you know, storm waters, talking about pumps, talking about all that kind of, sounds like a way you're trying to fight nature. And I think all you have to do is look at St Clair's boardwalk to know that nature always wins.
Except in Holland, where it never wins.
Well, what happens when the sea levels rise another metre?
Yeah,
I mean, maybe they'll finally win.
Mm.
But you were talking about if we don't take action right now, the water level...
Not necessarily right now, but at some point as this happens.
So this is what Dr. Gavin Palmer, who is the DCC Engineer Hazards and Science Director, said about that and about what is going to happen, what they could say. He said, the work they've done confirms what is generally understood. If the sea level rises, there will be a rise in groundwater levels, and that eventually leads, if there is no intervention, to surface ponding. So that's there as well. The other thing is, if we talk about some of the ground in South Dunedin dropping, subsiding, and one report this week said up to 5 mils, reports for the last 100 years have been saying sea levels have been going up 1.3 mils a year. If you join those two together, and it might be an extreme, we're talking 6.3 mils. Now, for 6.3 mils to get to 11 mils, which is what, 11 centimetres, which is what the Natural Hazard of South Dunedin report talked about, is 17 years. So if all those numbers are correct and accurate, and people are saying that the sea level is going to increase the level that it rises, but if they just stay stagnant and they're accurate, in 17 years, according to that report, we could have this ponding in parts of South Dunedin underwater.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's possible. I note that the idea of the ground sinking at South Dunedin, the scientists did say to be a bit wary of that science because it's reasonably new, and so they're not completely certain of it themselves. But certainly, obviously, we have to keep a very close eye on what's happening down there, and at some point make some really big and difficult decisions.
And I just think what we don't want for the whole region, and especially for the people who live in, who work in, who play in South Dunedin, is a fingers crossed approach. Because a little bit of this seems to be a bit of a fingers crossed approach. Like, something's going on, we're going to look at it, we'll see how it goes.
It's always good to be hopeful.